There we go. Alrighty. So welcome to our quarterly lunchtime brown bag seminar. Welcome to everyone. Parker, if I could just get you to keep an eye on, I don't know if you can see people as they join and admit them, that would be appreciated, or if anyone else can, that'd be great. We've got a couple of presentations. First, we've got Kaz McGregor. We're talking about a project that she's been working on with Manaki Ruahine. And then, so we've got about sort of 25 minutes for Kaz, kind of a presentation, and then just a bit of an opportunity to ask questions and have a bit of a discussion. And then secondly, we'll have Parker and Rory joining us and talking about the mainland island restoration operation project over in Wellington's kind of Eastbourne and Days Bay area. Some of the work that they've been doing over there with a number of kind of the subgroups that sort of sit under the Miro umbrella. So first up, I would like to invite Kaz to present and share her story. So Kaz, over to you. If you're able to share your screen, that'd be great.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. Sorry about that. There was a button that came up about a meeting recording and I accidentally said leave. So I'm happy to be here though. So yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. I'll see if I can share my screen now. All right. Oh boy, we'll see how we go. Okay, share. Can everyone see that all right?
Yep.
Okay, woohoo, awesome. Okay, cool. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. And yeah, my name is Kaz. I'm a GIS technical advisor for Eagle Technology Group. And today I'd just like to share with you a volunteer project that I worked on to implement GIS with Manaki Ruahine. I started back in 2021 and the solution is still going strong today, which we're really proud of. So Manaki Ruahine is a volunteer trust to set up to protect the whio or the blue duck. And they're these really cool native birds that like to hang out in rapid flowing water all throughout Aotearoa. However, introduced pests, especially stoats, have been reducing these populations to endangered levels. So I became involved back in early 2021 when I was walking Te Araroa, which is a hike from Cape Reinga to Bluff. So I did this with my husband on the left there and one of my friends as well. And Anthony and Fiona from Manaki Ruahine have this hut that you can see in the photo here in Palmerston North. They call it an urban dock hut. And it's in Palmy, and hikers can stay at the hut for a few nights, and the payments just by koha. And all the proceeds go towards Manaki Ruahine's pest control operations. And Anthony was actually saying that this is where they get majority of their funding from, is by hosting hikers and whatever donations that they give. And we were so inspired that we ended up donating a trap to them. So we got to sign this trap with our names, and it's somewhere out in the Ruahine Ranges now. So when I finished the hike and started working at Eagle, I thought it would be a good opportunity to use my GIS skills to help them out. So the main way we work to protect the whio is through trapping in the Ruahines. This is a mountain range just outside Palmerston North. And most of the traps are these box traps that you see in the photo here. These need to be rebaited monthly, and they can only catch about 1 to 2 pests at a time. We recognized a need to map their data and enter data from the field, since all they were using was Google Sheets and GPX files for the trap locations. So through the help of GIS In Conservation, we were able to get them some software licenses, and we built a mobile app for them to use in the field to manage the trap locations and any of the catch data. So this uses a combination of field maps and Survey 123. And one of the crucial parts of this project was to accommodate an offline workflow because the Ruahines have pretty much no cell phone reception, and make an easy to use app and management system for them as well. A user can download different maps onto their phone for offline use, and in each map, the existing traps are already loaded into the map, which makes it easier to find them while you're hiking. And if there's been a trap catch, then a form is filled out with all the details of the animal that was caught. So the mobile app was great for collecting new data, but we also wanted to view their existing data. So we preloaded some of their catch data from earlier that year by converting their Google Sheets data into geographic points. Viewing the trap catch data in a map allowed us to easily see hotspots of which traps were performing better than others. So in this example here, there were 3 traps in a row. I might be able to highlight it with my mouse if you can see that. They hadn't caught anything all year. And this part of the track is on a ridge line and is super exposed. So they're considering avoiding these areas for future trapping spots because they aren't super efficient. They're not catching anything. So this is just one example of how GIS is helping to improve their workflows. So now that all their data can easily be mapped, we can also summarize their data in a dashboard. This tool shows insights into their data that they never knew about and allows them to visualize and compare their efforts over time, which is really cool to see. So I took this screenshot yesterday, but I'll give you guys a live demo of it as well, so you can see the type of data that they're collecting and what they're getting out of it. So their operations have changed a lot since the first implementation of the app. Initially, we were only setting box traps, but then automated traps were being installed starting in 2022. So in the dashboard, they can actually see which species are being caught by which trap type, and we can even see which bait is attracting different pests. So this was super eye-opening for Manaki Rohini, and it's a great tool for them to see progress over time as well. So I just want to kind of go through a bit of a story that I had with them. So back in March of 2022, they started installing these A24s from Good Nature. And this meant that we needed to change the app to allow us to capture data for these different trap types. So we're on about the 4th version of the app now. And I decided to tag along with them into the Rohinis one time. So we were planning on installing 20 of these automated traps. The previous month, they had installed 15 of them. So we had a quick check of the traps as we walked past them. And we were shocked to find that 11 out of these 15 traps had the bait caps stolen off of them. So in this photo here, you can see that there's a cap missing off the top. This cap contains a Bluetooth chip to provide data on how many kills it's made, and it also contains a bait pouch, which gets reloaded into the trap every kill. So without these 2 components, the trap is essentially useless because we're not killing anything because there's no bait, and even if we did, we don't have any data to collect. So it was a bit of a rough one. Like as we kept walking down the track, we kept finding these empty bait pouches littered along, and the scenario was so unexpected, and we ended up not installing any new traps. So we just carried 20 of them into the forest with us and stayed overnight and had to carry them back out. But I was so excited to test out the app in the field, and then we didn't even end up using it. You know, it wasn't designed to capture this scenario. So I guess this is just a great example of how your expectations may not meet reality when you're developing these field applications for these types of organizations. And using the app in the field myself really highlighted some of the necessary changes that I needed to make back in the office. So I guess the question still remained, like, why would someone or something take the caps off of these traps? So it wasn't the dog. She was very helpful with locating the bait pouches, but we actually had a trail cam set up on one of the traps that had been stolen. So we know exactly who to blame here. So yeah, possums were smart enough to be able to screw off the top of these and just eat the bait themselves and then like just carry them along the track. It was just ridiculous. So this was such an eye-opening experience for me. And you know, coming back to the GIS side of things, the mobile app and the dashboard are really just the beginning for Manaki Rohini. And this all happened, you know, almost 2 years ago now. But my main takeaway from that experience was that creating these geospatial solutions from the office is great, but you'll actually experience a whole new level of understanding when you become the end user. So I now want to show you their current solution and how we adapted to their ever-changing needs using Experience Builder. So I'll come out of this. And hopefully you guys, let's see. Hopefully we could see this. I'll just move the Zoom meeting down here. All right, cool. So I'll come back to the welcome page. So what I really needed for them is I needed a one-stop shop because they weren't super technical. They didn't have time to learn the ins and outs of navigating, ArcGIS online and figuring out what layers were. They didn't know what GIS was. So I created a single experience builder. So all they need to do is they just have this bookmarked and they just come here, comes to the welcome page. This welcome page is really just a chance for them to be able to kind of see in a heat map how things are going, see which traps are maybe performing better than others. So the ones with higher trap catches are in the bright yellow. Then we have their trap operation. So this is all dynamic. Like I mentioned, so I think it's really cool to be able to see the trap catches over time because we've had this in place now since March 2021, or at least that's when the data is from. And to be able to see these big spikes from all of the, I guess, automated traps that we've put out. So the cool thing here is that you can, select a trap, everything filters out for it, and you can actually see what species we're catching with each of these different trap types. So like the AT220 is primarily possum or an unknown small animal. So this is quite interesting, like having to reconfigure the app to be able to collect this kind of data because you come out into the Rahinis and you look at the trap and it just says it has 45 kills. But you don't know if it's a rat or a mouse or anything like that. So we call them unknown small animal or USAs. But at least we're still getting that trap catch number so that we know that we are actually getting these out here. The other cool one is being able to, I'll just filter for like stoats, for example, because that's our target species. So we're catching most of our stoats from the DOC 150 double sets and the DOC 200 double sets. There's a chance we're getting them out of the other trap types as well, but we just don't know because unless there's a whole pile of them sitting underneath the automated traps. But it's cool to be able to connect it with that previous bait type because then we can see, okay, pork fat is actually what we're catching most of the stoats with, or an egg, or all of these other bait types that they have. And this is something we added in recently. And something else that I found interesting with them is that, so when they're out in the field collecting all the data on the trap types, I asked them, oh, how do you find the mobile app? And they go, oh, well, to be honest, we always forget to charge our phone before we go into the mountains. So often they just take a waterproof piece of paper and pen with them and just write everything down. So they needed a way to be able to enter the data after the fact. So that's where the data management side of things comes in. So not only can they view their data at a high level from the dashboard, they can also add their data in here. So they can zoom into the map, click on the trap, click on one of these, and then it should open up a survey 123 form. Now this will be the same survey. I'll need to switch accounts here. But this is the same exact survey that they use in the field as well. So the nice thing about that is that they have the same interface. If they do have their phone, then they can do it from while they're hiking. If they don't have their phone, then they can just do it on the survey in here as well. It pre-populates with the information that they need, and then they just say trap catch, yes or no. We had to add in this catch count because we could potentially get so many different, you could get 45 catches from those automated traps. So we had to create a way to dynamically cater for the different types of traps. So that was the biggest challenge of actually all of this. So that's really cool that we're able to do that. They've also got data tables in here that they can edit. So if they make a mistake, then they can go in and they can actually just change that themselves without having to open the survey at all. And if they don't know the previous bait type, then they can go in after the fact and add all of the previous bait types because they have that written down somewhere else so that it's all in one record. And that's how we are getting that data for the previous bait types. Now, the final thing, which I also think is really cool, is they wanted to be able to show Department of Conservation and other groups how much effort they're actually putting in. And so in here, again, I'll probably have to sign in. to the Mahi data one, but it's basically a timesheet that they wanted. Oh, here we go. Yep. So, they put in the date, they say whether they were doing field or whether they were doing in the workshop, doing trap making or anything like that. And then this data feeds into the dashboard, and it says the location of their tasks, and what percentage of their hours they're spending doing these different tasks, how much hours they've worked over time. And something else that they were interested in, they've recently got a hybrid car, or maybe it was fully electric. I think it was fully electric. And so they wanted to be able to see their carbon emissions now that they have their electric vehicle versus if they didn't have an electric vehicle, what their emissions would be, because they have to do a lot of driving. Like from Palmerston North to the trailhead is probably an hour. So hour one way, and that's just for one trap line. So if they have to do multiple trap lines, it could be lots of driving around, as you can see here with our travel hours. But yeah, that's all I had to show for you today, but I'm more than happy to take questions or comments from anyone. Yeah, I'm so glad I was able to share this with everyone.
It's great work, Kaz.
I've got a question. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Parker.
I'll just, you were saying, Kaz, why they started with Trap NZ, right?
I think
And
they
then-
started with Trap NZ, but it was not capturing the level of data that they wanted. So they wanted to be able to, make these correlations between the trap type, the species caught, the previous bait, all of that. And I think Trap NZ, to be honest, I haven't spent too much time working with it, but they couldn't figure it out. And I was like, well, I know how to use this system, so I could just build one for you.
Yeah, no. And Rory's going to talk about ERAD. Same thing with ERAD at Miro. People get confused with Trap NZ, where we just, and Rory can talk about that. But interesting, because we're seeing quite a few people using us instead of Trap NZ, but we can still dump the data back into Trap NZ.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kaz.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone got any other questions? Sarah.
Hello. Hi.
Hi there.
I just have a question. It looks fabulous, by the way. Very impressive.
Thank you.
My question relates to using field map versus survey 123. Why did you choose survey 123 over field maps? We're using field maps. The only downside that I can see, the only problem we have with field maps is not being able to multi-select bait types. So when you're rebaiting a trap, you can only pick one, or you have to do the same form several times.
Yeah. No, great question. So they do actually have field maps as well. When I built this in 2021, field maps didn't have the capability that Survey 123 did. And so that's come a long way in the last 2 years. And even now, like with the different species caught, because you can have a double trap where you catch 2 different species, and we really struggled to capture that information and all the different bait types as well. But they've just released a new update to ArcGIS Online in the last 2 weeks, where you can now filter based on those multi-select options that come in through Survey 123. So that's really cool. There's so many improvements that we could make to this, and I actually want in the future, I want them to only use field maps for field stuff, and then we'll probably still keep Survey 123 for them to add the data after the fact. But yeah, I would like them to use field maps more, but I find it's sometimes just not realistic for some of the conditions that they go out in. And I think that's the most surprising part, is that you build this whole app and you're like, yeah, it'll work. This is how you do offline areas. This is how you do everything. And then in reality, they're like, it's just easier to do pen and paper. Yeah.
Thanks. Naomi, I think you've got your hand up as well.
Hi, Naomi from Forest and Bird Peaceful Hibiscus Coast. We've had a dashboard created. It looks mirror image to this almost as well, by Paul Kay. So we're working with this, but I was just going to say about the Survey 123 and field maps. So we as staff have field maps, but all of our volunteers do the Survey 123 after that. They don't. We have over 150 volunteers, and we can't all have licensing. and apps for them to use the Field Maps app. So we get them to use the Survey 123. And also a lot of the comments we've had from our volunteers is they don't like using their phone because they're touching dead animals and it's wet and it's gross. And so yeah, a lot of them do use the paper. And then we have the dashboard set up like what you guys have got, and yeah, they fill it in afterwards. So it's just a response to the query in between the Field Maps and Survey 123.
Awesome. Thanks for your feedback. Yeah.
That looks awesome what you've done there too. It's great.
Oh, awesome.
Thanks.
And good to hear that others are doing pretty much the exact same thing. So we're all on the same page.
Yes. Yeah. No, it looks awesome. Yes. Paul Kay did a good job in setting us up. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Naomi. Julian and Matt.
Yes, Matt Scott.
Sorry, yeah. Hi, Kaz. It's Matt Groves here. I was really interested in the fact that they're capturing travel time and that sort of the unseen effort, because it's kind of so important for these conservation groups to have that business case essentially when they go and talk to DOC and say, look, actually this is the amount of time we're putting in it, and also to have the hard value of kills per kilometre, those kind of values. So I was just kind of wondering to the wider group, are lots of groups capturing that sort of data, or is that not happening? I'm intrigued. Question to the floor.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it until just now. It looks fabulous, but it looks like an awful lot of effort to implement. Sorry, but definitely worth it. I think that's fabulous. I'd love to be able to do that for our project.
We need to share. These things that we're creating are amazing, but we've got to share them with each other so that we don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Matt, are you part of GIC now? Welcome.
No, I'm just squatting, mate.
He's going to be a sponsor.
Yeah, that's the one.
Kaz, with this particular form, is this just something that they would fill in after the fact? Presumably, like, I worked a 5-hour shift and then put that information in and it gets logged.
Yeah. So when they put it in, it's just one person, and she'll just go through and say, okay, we went trapping. There was 6 of us, and we were all out for 8 hours, and then it'll calculate that for you. And then you can put comments in as well. If you drive, then there's a different, where's the driving one? Travel. So for the driving one, then you say number of vehicles that went out, the distance, and then it does a carbon calculation for you.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think because they can do it, rather than doing it one per person, that they can group it based on how many people went out with them. It makes it easier for them to actually do it every time they go out, because they don't go out every weekend. Like, they probably go out, I don't know, maybe 10 times a year or so, maybe 12 if they're lucky, if the weather allows for it. So yeah, I think it's just nice for them to be able to present this data to DOC and the likes to say, this is how much effort we're actually putting in. And yeah, being able to compare that to the trap catches that you're getting to see, what your effort is compared against how many kills you're getting and the difference that you're making to the environment. Absolutely.
That's super awesome.
Quentin, to just go back on what you were saying about making this like available, I almost wonder if we could, I've had a lot of people have interest in this experience builder plus like the surveys and everything. I almost wonder if we could create a solution package on ArcGIS Online that people just download, and then it's all kind of there and they just have to start adding their data to it. Because it took us like 4 iterations of the app to get to this point where we could collect data on every single type of trap that they have out there.
I would love that.
Yeah.
It's definitely been something that's been on our kind of like our vision for quite some time, is actually starting to create tools that, like you said, they look the same, right? Like everyone's essentially trying to do very similar work, but we feel like we start from scratch all the time. And so the more that we can kind of template some of these solutions and make them more readily available, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm very open to ideas on how to do that. So yeah.
We'll definitely take you up on that. We've got time for just one, probably last quick one. Sarah, your hand is still up, or is it up?
Yep, no, it's back up again. My question is, have you built this to comply with the predator-free 2050 data standards? Because we've built something very similar to yours, and we haven't paid attention to those. Maybe we should have done.
Nope. So yeah, I did all
good.
this. Particularly, like most of this was back in 2021, when I first
Yeah.
started at Eagle, and so the data sets are just based on what they said they wanted to capture, the data they were interested in, and that's what I built. I wasn't sure if we were supposed to like put it back into Trap NZ, but I think the cool thing is we've gotten it to a stage now where like I haven't edited this or touched it in like a year, but they're still using it. And I think it's important to build something, if you're a volunteer for an organization, build something that you can eventually step away from, because we need these people to be able to be self-sufficient and teach them how to use these tools as well. So if we can make that as easy as possible, then, you know, that's always the end goal. Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you, Kaz. Really appreciate you sharing your story with us and the work that you're doing with Manaaki Ruahine. It's really great. And I love the fact that you kind of just started out, like, you know, you were out for a hike, you met these guys, and then, you know, you're able to, I guess, work with them, and you've given them something that they can, you know, absolutely use and apply every day in their work. So well done. Great effort.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank
for
you.
having me. Awesome opportunity.
Yeah. Hopefully you can stay around, and I think you had to take off, but appreciate
Yeah,
your time.
I've got to head out to Palmerston North actually. So, but I'm really looking forward to watching the rest of this recording next week. So
Great, thanks
for recording it all. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Kaz. So next we've got Parker Jones and Rory McPherson. So Parker, I might let you just provide a bit of an introduction to yourself and to Rory, both GIC committee members, but also you're both volunteering for Miro. So over to you, Parker.
You're on mute, Parker.
Thanks. Yeah, I wasn't expecting this bit, sorry. So Miro is a group behind on the eastern side of Wellington Harbor. A lot of you guys know that I was with Eagle for 30 years, marketing the ISRI product, and then 10 years, of course, on the committee of GIS Conservation. But next year is my 20th year of trapping on behalf of Miro and on the committee of Miro since day one. As part of Miro, we do not just trapping, but also Sally Bain was a lady who set up a thing called ERAT, which is what Rory, I'll pass over to Rory, is doing. ERAT is educating residents about trapping. Originally, I wanted to call it Eradicating Rats A-Team, but that wasn't accepted by the committee. And it's really important because the area that ERAT, it's pretty much engaging all the houses throughout the Eastbourne area, every 100 meters with a trap, and also along the foreshore where our dotterels are nesting. So it's very important, this ERAT project. So I'll turn it over to you, Rory.
Sure. Thanks for that, Parker. Yeah, so as after just following up to that, just a quick introduction about myself. So during the day, I'm a principal GIS analyst at Stantec, but in my own time, I've been volunteering for GIC for maybe 5 years now, perhaps. And I'm also a sitting member on the GIC committee currently. So I've had quite a bit of time with the supporting ERAT, and that last comment that Kaz made about thinking about how we're building or supporting groups through GIC to be self-sufficient, so that these apps and processes can continue to be used by those members, that we don't have to put in that maintenance time. That really resonates a lot with what I'm doing. I think is something we should all really strive for. The ERAT project, I put in a fair bit of time at the start. Nowadays, though, it's really quite a support role where I'll jump in if there's something new to add, something to update. But it's great to see it just being used and continue to be used and picked up by the community. I might just do it. I'll swap to a screen share now. Hopefully that works. Here we go. Okay. Is that coming through?
Yep.
Should be. Okay. So I'll actually go through this story map that I think that I put together for the ERAT project a number of years ago. it captures a lot of the information about what ERAT is, what the initiatives are, and what it's doing. And I think this is just a great way to share some of this information. This is public as well, so I can put this link perhaps in the chat afterwards if anybody wants to explore this themselves. So just a bit more about the ERAT program to add on what Parker said. So ERAT is working kind of under the operations of Miro, but it's also working in partnership with Hutt City Council, as well as all the local residents and the volunteers within that area. So the ERAT program is really just a community trapping effort across Eastbourne, which is on Wellington's Eastern Harbour area, as you can kind of see in this map here. And what ERAT kind of does is it works with the volunteers, allowing them to upload their predator catch data, but also monitor their tunnel tracking data. And this can all be done using the GIS tools, such as some of the web tools we've seen, and also just some maps that we're producing for them time to time. So the aim here is, of course, to achieve sustainable predator control within the area. And it's very much a community effort from everybody that's involved or living in this area. There's numerous traps that are set up through the area, as well as trap lines that have been set up by volunteers. And just to go through, there's a couple, because this is a little bit different than perhaps other conservation groups, in the sense that it's very much a community-driven idea. It's not necessarily going out into the bush per se. That's very much what Miro is looking after, but the ERAT is very much in the urban area of Eastbourne and the bays. So with that comes a couple difficulties that are common to some of these efforts. One is sort of a dislike of trapping that can be people might have. So one of the initiatives or the things that is done with ERAT is that we try to overcome this challenge by working with volunteers. So there's a trained neighborhood trapline operator, and the operator will go around and communicate and engage with the community members. And they'll help them by providing a regular trap clear and a rebate service for the traps or the traps lines in those areas. So what it means is that we can take those responsibilities out of the residents themselves if they're not comfortable doing that. All we need is to then work with them to allow us to set up those preventative measures, those traps and trap lines with their assistance, with the permission per se. Another thing that we can do is we've set up some specific traps that have these indicator arms on them. So when the trap is triggered, an indicator arm, just a little flag you can think about, it goes up and it will then alert the trap owner that it's been triggered and there's something to catch. So by doing this, it means that the residents, they don't actually have to go and check the traps if they're not comfortable doing that, or they don't want to see caught rats or other predators. They can then just look at it and see if the trigger's been trap's been triggered. And it also means that our community volunteers that are clearing these traps can also look at them from a distance. So working with some of them, as I've heard them say, as they drive down the coast, they can just quickly look over and spot all the ones that they can see from the road and say, oh, this one's up, I'll go back and check that one later. So it saves a bit of time actually going and checking each one, and just another nice thing that we've been able to add on to those traps. And because it's an education piece as well, we've set up videos, so you can check out a link to a YouTube video here, for instance, where that just shows you how to install that if anybody's interested. One of the next challenges, of course, is sustaining the effort. So, as you start, people set up traps, and they usually have a bit of enthusiasm about this. But then once they might have caught a few things, or as time goes on, a lot of those efforts can kind of slip away, or the momentum can sometimes die off, especially with residents or just communities per se that aren't fully, all the time involved in this. So what they do is essentially, by having this volunteer, they set up a couple programs in more of an education program where they do monthly visits or regular visits to people in the neighborhood about it, especially people where they need to have more traps set up. There's also just having those volunteers in place. They're kind of this. It is a kind of a volunteer project manager position in a sense, but they are the one that's really championing this effort, and they'll bring together the ideas, they'll keep the momentum going, and that's just really important and pretty crucial to keep these works continuing forward. Some other things they do as well. They'll do letter drops. There's newsletters that go out, and they also have an active, I think, Facebook group as well that participants or people in the community can participate in if they want to comment or ask questions. So it's very much something that they can easily reach out to and hear from people about what's going on and learn more. One of the other challenges is just a fear for sometimes the actual animals or pets and children's safety as well. So there's a local veterinarian that is associated with it, that they get best practice advice and guidance from, as guided by Predator Free NZ. And they also just work hard to maintain humane traps as much as possible. So they follow a few advisory programs and other standards to make sure that they're doing this. And these are all just some of the things that we're following. As I said, those are the top 3 kind of challenges that we've gone through. This is an older story map, as I noticed, so this probably needs a bit of updating, but just showing Sally Bain, who is a previous volunteer project manager for the ERAP program. She's actually moved on since. But it's great to just have these champions in the community that people know their neighbors with them, and they really progress these efforts in a really great way. So there's a bit of a section here about Sally and what some of the efforts that she's done, if you want to watch any of that. Now, going into some of the efforts that's going on, in addition to trapping, there's trapping going on, but there's also tracking tunnels that are going on, so we can track over time. Are we making a difference? Are the number of catches going down? Are the number of rodents or predators being removed from the area? So the trap, it's not just about the trapping, but also the tunnels, and those are both efforts that we support through GIC. So a little bit further, I'll actually go into another dashboard that's very similar. And I'll show you this right now, and then I'll go over to the trapping cards just because this is here. So this is one of the dashboards that we're using to show the community members, which they can visit if they want to see what's going on. You can see, again, this is quite an old one as well. So this has been going on since I think 17, 18 time. So that here you can see the total number of catches. We're almost at 10,000 now, and very similar to the dashboard that Kaz was showing before. We're showing where those catches are. We're showing them by type. We can see by the trap type. But also that over time, there's some new functionality and things that I saw in Kaz that was quite cool. Some things that I could think about bringing into here. But it's just another way that they can see what's going on, and they can also check, investigate the areas as well. So if they want to look at perhaps Burdensgate North, they can see where the catches have occurred in that area. They can see the number of pest types from that area and the catches by those trap types, as well as the catches over time, being the last 12 months or even the previous year, and they can look at the differences between them. So a simple dashboard, but it does an effective job at communicating what's going on, where things at currently, what do we need to do a little bit better at, per se. So that's one of the tools that is used. And can I move this banner? Oh yeah, I can. Cool. Just need to get to another tab. So residents and volunteers can submit data to this. Now, as I've kind of noted a little bit, this is a very old application. So this is actually using a GeoForm, which I don't think Field Apps wasn't around when we set this one up. Survey 123 is something I've been meaning to re-inject in this project, just haven't done it because this just seems to work and everybody's really happy with it, and it's not been deprecated yet. But we actually have a GeoForm where the residents and the community volunteers can go and fill out the form. As was, I think, mentioned earlier, they're not as in the process of carrying a device around with them as they're catching these traps. They tend to get the information from the residents, or they'll tag it in a little notebook as they go and do their cleaning out the traps, etc. Then they'll come back and they'll enter that information as a volunteer, or as a community member that looks after themselves. They can go to this form and do it themselves. So simple. They can just input some information about when, where, what type of pest, how many, a simple location, where it is, and then they can submit it, and then it goes straight through to the form. Some of the other tools that are set up as well is, we're tracking things like heat maps as well to see where the catches are. So this is a simple web app builder, but it's showing where just that where the most catches are occurring using kind of some heat maps that they can explore. And there's lots of other layers in here that they can investigate individually where the traps are, the traps by the pest type or the trap type. So it's another tool, and this is a public one as well, and the community they can go to and find out more information. Some of the last things that we can do, and I'm trying to keep short on time because I know that Parker has a bit to say as well. We're also looking at things like coverage as well. So where's places that we might need to put new traps, or is there anything that we could do more effectively to ensure that we're trying to reduce these numbers or predators as much as possible. So this is all very much around the trapping initiatives and the catches. Some of the other things that we'll do as well is just helping out with some of those trapping tunnel lines. So as we noted, 3 times a year, we'll put out the traps that have monitoring tunnels in them, and we'll get the information back to get a sense of how effective has the trapping been? Are we still seeing numbers? What types of rodents and predators are we still seeing in the areas? So about 3 times a year, I'll get a lot of data sent to me from what's captured in those, but also just from essentially the volunteers will send me a spreadsheets essentially of their own kind of accumulation of what's in these trapping tunnel observations as well. So I'll make a few maps from them that look something like this, just showing all the areas broken down to the percentages. And over time, we can look at how this how the trapping efforts have really affected things. And there's a newsletter that they send out somewhat a couple times a year. It's kind of just up to when they can get around to it, but they'll send this around to anybody that's in the community or is interested in it, and they'll talk about things like progress that's happened, what we're seeing with the trapping efforts. So it's very much, as you can see, a very engaging prospect and something they're doing to keep everybody involved in it, sharing what they're finding, and etc. So that's pretty much it for what the ERAT is. But overall, just kind of reflecting on it, it's been a quite exciting opportunity to be a part of, seeing some great efforts and some results happen over time. And because it's such a community driven one, there's a lot of people involved, and that you're seeing the satisfaction of people catching things and knowing they're contributing toward this predator-free New Zealand, essentially. It's great. It's pretty rewarding. So it's great to be a part of that. And it's great to see how GIS can support this this effort and this initiative overall. So yeah, that's it from me. And should we just pass it over to Parker, and then we can take questions jointly at the end, I suppose?
Yeah, thanks. Okay. That's great, Rory. I think really good just to see how persistent some of these applications can be as well. You talk about geoforms, like they still work, right? So, and like you said, people are pretty happy with what's there. But I think that, yeah, be interesting to have a bit of a chat if we can, maybe if not this session, but perhaps in the future around, sort of how we continue to ensure that we keep some of the technology up to date as well. And, not just this one, because I think I've seen geoforms sitting elsewhere as well. And at the moment it's fine, right? But yeah, how do we, ensure that we don't sort of walk away and the stuff kind of stops working in the future. So thanks. Yeah, it's a really good project. Parker.
Okay, let me just get back to the Zoom and I'll share my screen. Thanks, Rory. It's really appreciated too what's happening with the ERAT project, and it's quite critical. I've lost my capability to share.
Should be the big green button.
Yeah, no, I've lost my window with the app. Sorry, let me just pull base down. Zoom.
I find in Zoom it disappears. You just need to move your mouse around a little bit around the bottom of your screen. No, that's just me.
No, I'm totally out of Zoom for some reason. That's can you see me? Can you see that screen?
No.
We can just see you.
Because normally you're right. I don't know what's happened. Sorry
Try
about
Alt
this,
Tab
guys.
on the keyboard, Parker. Alt Tab will cycle through your applications, so you should see Zoom that one.
Let's see if I can return to meeting. Sorry, there we go. I'm back in the meeting. Sorry about that. Okay, typical sales type with finger problems. Okay, can everybody see that? Banded dotterels in the hut?
Yep.
Okay. So around 10 years ago, we're on sort of Greater Wellington. So the area we're working in outside of the ERAT project is really Greater Wellington land over on the East Coast. So it's the Lakes Block and also behind Eastbourne. And Greater Wellington contracted a person by the name of Nicky MacArthur and Annette Harvey to do a monitor of the banded dotterels. The banded dotterels you can see here are ground nesting birds. And they've got the same status as the blue duck as well, and also the giant spotted kiwi. You can see the little banded dotterel out of the bottom. Unfortunately, there's very little money being used for the banded dotterel. And with Nicky MacArthur, by the way, he's on the committee that judges the status of birds, of what they are in terms of their endangered status. And he's the science behind our project. So we're actually working to land care research standards in terms of our monitoring and protection of the banded dotterels. With our high impact permit, we're allowed to catch and band. So we have L3 banders that come in and help us catch them. This is the area. So you can see up here is Robinson's Bay. So that's actually a area where houses are and where ERAT's quite important to keep the pests away. Also at the entrance to the harbor, you got the lighthouse, and over at Bering Head is where the main breeding areas. We also have dotterels, and we're talking to the Wellington Airport. They're actually breeding off of the southern end of the runway. Okay. For this application, so Pasi Hivenen here, he used to work with us at Eagle back in the late 1990s and 2000s. While he was here, he did the heat maps for the New Zealand Birders Atlas. He also did bird counts on Farewell Spit. So I knew very well that he was quite keenly involved with birds. It would be a perfect, ideal volunteer for us. Pasi currently works for the Edinburgh ISRI Research and Development Center as a senior developer. So I talk to him in the morning and he talks to me at nighttime. So what I'm going to do now is I'll switch over to the live application. Now, can you see my little map moving around? Okay. So I'm just going to zoom in. So this is Eastbourne. This is actually live. This is the field maps. This is using the field maps application. The red indicates that nest failed. Green means we still have birds sitting on the nest that's active. Blue means that they have successfully hatched. What I can do also with this app, I can turn on all the different years we've been monitoring. And what that means for us here at Eastbourne is that actually area is a dog leash-free area, walking. And what we do is we know exactly where they've nested over the last 8 years. So we fence about a third of that area and we put walkthroughs so the dogs can get through that area. So it's quite important for us to know exactly where the nests are. And that way we've had a really good buy-in from the dog walkers and rarely see any dog walker out there in the actual area. They go to the high tide mark and keep away from it. Some of the other things we've learned in terms of this is, just turn off that layer. The dotterels pretty much come back to the exact same spot to nest. So they're here, they arrive usually in about June, and then they will take off in February. They can re-nest up to 5 times, so they're very good breeders. And then we found, like up here with PAP and PEY, they've come back every year for 5 years to within 10 meters of this spot and nested exactly the same spot. Ironically, and then similarly, so out of the Lakes block, this is our current status. So if I just click on and show you, so I'll just do a query on, so Lake Spot, that number means 23, year 23. That's the first nest we found. We banned our birds with flags, which are 3 letters. So this is PHK and PKK, or the mother and father. I can then go in and look at the pictures of what, so we go in, we mark it, GPS it with field maps. We take a picture of the actual nest site. So there you can see the 3 eggs on the ground. Very easy to predate. Unfortunately, this one, we had a trap camera on it and it got eaten by a harrier hawk. So predated by harrier hawk. We can't do much about harrier hawks being a native species for New Zealand. What we, And then the other thing we've got with this, so I can go out and give you an example. Let's just say I want to put in a new nest. I just hit the bottom line. And I'll just say it's going to be a new nest, and I can take a photo. Say, yep, that's okay. And then it's just drop down. It's typical field maps. We'll put in a nest ID of a test, but it usually be a 23011. And then whoever's sitting on it, nest status currently occupied. And then a number of eggs, 3 eggs, say, and so forth, so on. Date found. It usually the default right to today's date. And then I can just save that. So a very simple form to go out in the field. Now, because it is field maps, I've only got 2 teams that use this app, because this app you can actually delete and do everything you want to the application. Now, the other thing we have on this is what we call sightings. So that's the nest, but with sightings, we've banded now 128 birds, but we've only found where they go in that off season. We've only found 8 of them. So we still don't know where a lot of our dotterels go, which is one of the reasons for. So if I just start zooming out, you can see the red dots are where these birds are sighted in the off season. So most of the birds are pretty lazy. They stick around the Wellington area. They go to Peka Peka, they'll stick the Ration Point, Hatunua, over to Lake Wairarapa, and then Kapiti. But we had a real interesting where one of our birds went all the way to Numia. Now this is PAP, who's the nest I showed you. This is a record flight for banded dotterels, and for 4 years in a row, he has gone back to an abandoned shrimp farm in New Caledonia. We've been in touch with David Ugolani, he's the president of the Society of Ornithology over in New Caledonia. So this is a picture of Pap in New Caledonia at the shrimp farm, fattening up and getting ready to come back to New Zealand to breed. So pretty amazing in terms of what it could do, but again, we just haven't found, a lot of our birds. We don't know where they're going still, so there's still a lot unknown about them. Then what I'm going to do, so that's pretty much the app, and I'm not a specialist. So I'm actually here from the user point of view, because I'm the team leader at Miro's committee that's been doing the banded dotterel stuff. So we put in an annual report, and that goes through, and we have people like Taranaki Whenui. I'm just going to switch my screen back away from the app. And back to my PowerPoint. So what we've also done is, so this is the team I've trained out at Bering Head. So this is a conservation volunteers group funded by conservation, the Jobs for Nature. They're mainly Taranaki Whenui. So these guys are the ones that I've trained in actually monitoring out at Bering Head. So they've got full control of the system out there, and they really love, these guys are doing a lot of work with things like weed, pest clearance, and so forth, but they really enjoy getting out there and working with the banded dotterels. You can see, after 20 years of volunteering of trapping, we can actually see how by doing the trapping that we're protecting this species, and it gives people a lot of rewarding, because they go out and trap and not really see much difference. So it's great to see these guys. The other thing that's happening is the app is being known by other people now. So we've got Hawke's Bay, Save the Dotterels. Hawke's Bay is now using the app. They just started using it last year. And the banded dotterel, Elsa down in Kaikoura, she's been using the application now for, 5 or 6 years. And then also, we've had another group. So Posse's been able to model what happens during the off season, because there's about 3 months when there's not any dotterels nesting. Posse will go through any changes to the application. So one of the people wanted to, instead of to capture nests, they wanted to know who was sitting. So based upon color, they could see that they had either petrels or blue penguins or whatever oyster catchers sitting on those nests. That's up in the Bay of Plenty. Reba Girili was one of our banders from Hutt City. She came out and helped band. Now she went up to Wingspan, and Wingspan is a group up in Rotorua who work with the falcons and owls and so forth. And they had like 1,800 points that they wanted to of sightings of the New Zealand falcon. So Quentin Higgins, who's actually on board, has developed a system for them. So this also came kind of out of the work we're doing here with Miro with the banded dotterels. So she knew about GIC that way. And of course, we're probably being a bit with some of the rich Yanks, but there's our PAT, one of our cute little banded dotterels. Yeah, so they're very fun birds to work with, very cute. and they're becoming very used to us. So if anybody ever wants to come out with us on a monitor, we monitor all 3 areas on a weekly basis. We're trapped on these, we trap out there twice every fortnight during the breeding season. Our biggest pest was, we've taken, by the way, the nest success from 3% to 56% out of the lakes in Bering Head. Unfortunately, at Eastbourne, we do everything the same except for we don't trap cats. And to give you an idea, last year we had 6 fledglings from Bering Head, 6 fledglings from the Lakes Block, 1 poor fledgling from Eastbourne, and the only difference is we don't trap cats, right? So we are presenting to the Hut City and we're using this information to really try to get the Hut City to put in rules and regulations for controlling of cats, microchipping, and so forth, so on. Okay. And that's it for the doctorals. Over to you, Benita.
Thanks, Parker. That was a really quick whip through, I think, from both you and Rory in terms of the work into projects that you're doing under the Miro umbrella. So I just want to say thanks to you both. Unfortunately, we're kind of out of time for questions, but perhaps in a subsequent BrownBag lunchtime seminar, we could come back to some of the work that Miro's doing. Because I'd be quite keen to take a bit of a deeper dive into, how the community kind of responds as well. Because I think one of the key things that Miro does is it's really good at actually engaging the local community a lot of the work.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I joined Miro really was to see how GIS can help volunteer groups. So we did things like we actually beta tested both Doc Walk the Line and Trap NZ on behalf of those groups. We actually picked Doc Walk the Line at that time. We have transferred over to Trap NZ, but like I said, with the ERAT stuff, a lot of people a lot of our people don't like Trap NZ, so we got a spreadsheet from them. We just uploaded ourselves. Yeah.
That's great. I want to say thanks to our presenters today, to Kaz, to Rory, and to Parker, and thanks to everyone for attending. If anyone would like to volunteer to share their story at a future, we try and do this every quarter, so always looking for good stories. I will stop recording now and say thanks to everyone. Great to see you, and hopefully we'll see you back in the new year for our next quarterly presentation. So it's a good chance to share, all the work that you're doing, all the hard work, lots of good stuff happening. So thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
That's awesome.